Hello neighbors, it's Brad here at Etrailer, and today we're taking a look and installing the Etrailer Trailer Hitch Receiver on a 2016 Cadillac SRX. Now, this is what your hitch is going to look like when it's installed on your Cadillac, and it's got a nice clean look. A majority of the hitch is hidden behind the rear fascia, leaving just the receiver tube opening to be really visible, and it does sit pretty nice against the fascia. Now, that's something that you may notice is that panel that was here previous will not be able to be reinstalled because the hitch sticks out a little bit, but again, it's got a pretty clean look. Now this one is a 2" by 2" receiver tube opening, and something that's specific to the Etrailer hitch is that matte black powder coat finish, which looks really nice here. But with that 2" by 2", that means you have tons of different options available, which is going to be great for any bike racks, ball mounts, or cargo carriers that you may put on here. All of them are going to stay in place with a 5/8 pin and clip. And this is not included with the hitch, but a lot of times your accessories will come with a pin and clip. If you want to get a locking one, those are available here at Etrailer, and that way if you plan on leaving your accessories on the back of your Cadillac, they can stay locked in place. We also have a rolled style safety chain loop, so if you're planning on pulling a trailer, you can hook up your safety chains nice and easy if it's a standard S-hook, or even a larger clevis style is going to work just fine. And speaking of tow capacities and hauling a trailer, this does have some pretty good capacities. As far as your gross trailer weight rating, it's going to come in at 5,000 pounds, which is going to be the weight of the trailer plus the accessories loaded onto it. You have a tongue weight rating of 500 pounds, which is going to be the downward pressure that's put on the inside of the receiver tube opening, and that's going to be your bike racks and cargo carriers. And with 500 pounds, that's pretty solid. You're going to be able to get a 4-bike bike rack loaded up or a cargo carrier loaded up on vacation. So that's really nice. This can be used with a weight distribution hitch, and it is going to bump those numbers up just slightly. It's going to get your gross trailer weight rating up to 6,000 and your tongue weight to 600. Now, keep in mind you want to make sure that you check the vehicle's owner's manual to see what it's capable of towing, and then compare that with the hitch, as well as any of the components that you'll be using to tow. Now, some of the accessories that you'll get as far as bike racks and cargo carriers stow in a vertical position, and you want to make sure that it's going to work well with your Cadillac. So from the center of our hitch pin hole to the furthest point of the rear fascia, it's coming in at 2.5 inches. I'm not too worried that you're going to have any issue with those in those stowed positions. Keep in mind you're probably not going to be able to open up your rear hatch. You'll have to fold those down, but that's not too big of an issue. As far as ground clearance goes, this one's pretty good. Top of the receiver tube opening to the ground, we're coming in at 19 inches. And that's really nice because when you have suspended accessories, as you go up inclines, they're going to want to tilt towards the ground. Or if you go over large bumps, sometimes they can bottom out. But this is pretty good. I don't worry too much, but it is something to keep in mind. That measurement's really going to come in handy when picking out a ball mount. So measure the coupler of the trailer you'll be towing, and then compare that with your 19-inch measurement, and then you can determine the rise or drop necessary. More than likely, you're probably going to go with a drop in this configuration here, but hopefully this helps you determine the proper one for your vehicle. Now, as far as the installation goes, in theory, this one is not that bad to do. You do need to remove just a few things to give you access to raise your hitch up in place, which is pretty easy to do. The part that you might run into issues, depending on where you live and the conditions your car has seen, the weld nuts that you'll be bolting the hitch into can get corroded pretty easily. It's pretty common on some of these GM SUVs, and if you're in the Rust Belt like we are, it can become an issue. So you do want to make sure that you're running all your hardware through before getting it mounted up, but really it's just 6 bolts that you'll put in place, tighten, torque, and that's pretty much it. So I'm going to pull this into the shop and show you exactly how we got it installed. To begin our installation, we're going to remove our center panel, and it's just going to be 2 Phillips head screws. So with our screwdriver, we'll get those removed. And we'll be removing a little bit of hardware here and there just to get access for our hitch to raise up in place. So I recommend keeping your hardware in a nice, safe location. That'll make reinstallation a lot easier. And with those out, we should be able to just pop this out of place. There's also going to be 4 plastic push pins that we're going to remove, 2 of them on each side. And there's a slot that allows you to put a flathead screwdriver or a trim panel tool like I have here in there, and we'll just separate that plastic push pin. It can fight you a little bit, so just take your time. And once you get that center section pulled out, if you kind of wedge between the plastic and kind of pry that, it should get the whole thing out. So if they do separate, just make sure you have both of the pieces. And if they do break, don't be mad at yourself. It's pretty common. You can go to an auto parts store to replace these, but not a big deal. We'll get the other two taken out as well. We're also going to have two 10mm nuts that we're going to remove, and they're located in this bracket. You're going to want a deep well 10mm socket to get these taken off. Once you get that nut taken off, we'll go ahead and just remove this portion for now. That's going to allow us to get that hitch to slide up in place. Now, speaking of that, we're getting ready to put our hitch up, but there's a few things that we need to take care of first. And this can really make or break the difference of how easy or hard the hitch installation is going to be for you. The hardware we're going to be using are going to be these bolts with a conical tooth washer, and you'll see the teeth need to face up towards the metal. And two of them are going to go into these weld nuts that are located right underneath where our panel was. And we also have two on each side of the frame rails, and those are going to be located up here. If you live in the Rust Belt like us in Midwest here, rust is very common and corrosion buildup in these weld nuts, and that can really make it tricky to get your hardware in place. So I recommend trying to take your bolts and hand thread them through. They should get started. Shouldn't give you a ton of resistance. If they do, you're going to want to clear that out, otherwise it's going to make it really tough to get these started. In some of the more serious ones, we end up using a tap to clear that out, but normally if you put a little bit of penetrating oil and back these in and out a few times, that should be enough to accomplish it. You can also get a tube brush to kind of clear that out, but again, if it's seriously bad, you're going to want to take a look at a tap in the same thread pitch as your hardware. So go through, make sure all of them do thread in easy. That way when we get our hitch up in place, we can run these in by hand. Now at this point, you might want an extra set of hands to raise this up in place, and I recommend having at least two bolts handy, and that way we can get them started, one on each side, just a few threads, and that's going to hold the hitch up in position and allow us to get the rest of them in there nice and easy. So slide this up, and you're going to have to peel the fascia back just a little bit. Do that on both sides. And then we'll kind of slide this up, and knowing that these feet up here, you can actually get one of those started if you want, once the hitch is kind of in position. Now on the driver's side, it's a little bit tight with the wiring harness that's on the frame rail, so just kind of make sure it's not pinching that as you're raising it up in place. And ours is a little bit tight here, so it's kind of supporting itself. If that's the case with yours, a dead blow hammer, just kind of hold it in place and knock that into place to where the holes align, and then you can get your hardware in. Now I got one started, but it's still pretty wedged in there. So if you need a little bit extra help here, you can put a floor jack underneath this to kind of raise this up, and that's going to help push this into place. Make sure the hitch slides past the plastic part of that fascia, and you're not putting pressure on that. And it's going to get a little tight, and so I recommend getting the washer kind of slid in place on these ones before threading it in. Now I got all of the hardware started, and it was a little bit of a fight. Not only did I have to use my dead blow to kind of get it in place, but also a pry bar to kind of get everything to line up properly. And that's really the key. Make sure you can thread it in by hand, because if you try to send it in, sometimes you're going to cross thread it, and then that's not good for anybody. So just make sure you get those in place, and then you can come back with a 19mm socket, and we're going to snug these all down. You don't need to get crazy here, because we're going to come back with a torque wrench immediately after. And using our torque wrench, you can get away using a 3/8. Check the instruction manual for those torque settings, and then we'll just go back through and torque them all down properly. And this is going to be important. It's going to make sure that obviously it's tight enough for us to be able to use the hitch for towing or any accessories, but also very important that it's not putting too much stress on those weld nuts. So let's go through, we'll get these all torqued down, and then we'll have our hitch installed. So now at this point, we can go ahead and get our brackets put back in place. Now something to point out, this is not going to go back. The hitch does stick out further than this panel, so you may want to hold on to this if you ever decide to take your hitch off, but it's completely up to you. So I'll go ahead, I'll get our plastics put back in and our nut put back in place, and that should do it for the installation of our hitch. And that was a look and installation of the Etrailer Trailer Hitch Receiver on a 2016 Cadillac SRX.